Dear God in heaven, thank you for your continuous grace. Thank you for continuously being with us. Taking this is about to open your word and study the message of the time. Please be with each and every one of us to understand more about your message and to grow more in faith and more in you. I pray all this in Christ's name. Amen. So we are going to be doing um the Revelation 17 studies that were done by our commander, um, our camp in October. So last week, I think it was last week Tuesday, um, or Friday, I don't remember well. No, it was last week Tuesday. We looked at lesson. We really looked at lesson 1 and lesson 2. Now we'll be looking at lesson 3. Yeah, so I'm gonna continue from there. So if you wanna follow along, we'll just open the PDF and then we'll just follow through. Okay, so this is titled Lesson 3, right? Number 1 is giving us context and opening, right? And the focus for this is understanding the structure of Revelation 13 and Revelation 17 through the lens of Isaiah 46. Right? And we've been doing that through lesson 1, lesson 2, just looking at Revelation 13, Revelation 17, and Isaiah 46. Basically, just looking at the 1, 2, 3 structure and placing where we are in history. And last time, we got to a place where we identified that 2 is important for us because without 2, we wouldn't know 3, right? And without 2, we wouldn't even know the context of 3. That's basically what we got out of that presentation. We got that from making an example of Daniel 3, right, with Nebuchadnezzar. What Nebuchadnezzar was doing there at the time, with the whole fire thing, putting Daniel on fire. That was legal, right? What he was doing was legal. And most people were expecting Trump to come illegally. Most people were expecting Trump to do things illegally, to not follow the law. And what we saw last week was that that is not true. Trump follows the law, right? And we got that by looking at number 2. Number 2, which is our education in 2021. We saw that Trump tried entering the glorious land um, illegally. He tried entering the glorious land illegally, and it wasn't possible. He wasn't able to enter glorious land illegally. He had to go through the law. He had to go through the law to enter into um, presidency. If it wasn't for them following the law, wouldn't be able to. So number 2 is that that's how important it is. It's telling us that this is what you should be looking for. And we see number 3, we see that Trump, whatever Trump is doing is legal. Trump might be manipulating law, but whatever he's doing is legal. And that's kind of problem where people are facing, because it's how is what Trump is doing, how is it legal? And it is legal. How was Daniel being thrown in the fire legal? It was legal. That's what I mean. Trump tried to get into the presidency illegally. He wasn't able to. In the Sunday law, he got there legally, and he was able to get there. And every law that has been passing ever since, even though we see that it is going against our message and it's going against the message of the hour, it is still legal. What it's doing is legal. Now, legal does not necessarily mean that it's fair, or legal does not necessarily mean that it is right or morally right. When I mean fair or right, I mean morally, on a moral landscape. When we look at what Donald Trump is doing, when you want to look at it in the moral sense, and we know that we as prophets, we don't look at things morally, we look at them prophetically. But when you look at the thing that Trump is doing, morally they are wrong. What he's doing is so wrong, and he shouldn't be doing it. But when you look at the law and what he's doing, it is legal. The law allows him to do whatever he's doing right now in America. The immigration, every single thing that he's doing, they are branches um of government for a reason, right? And we all know that he has places people in all that. But even though he has places people in all that, he has to go through a process. Um, yeah. But like compared to before, the process was a bit lengthy, but now it's no longer lengthy because he has cut up some departments head. But the point is here that everything that Trump is doing is within the law, it is legal. And Trump won't come here and tell us that um the constitution and try to change the constitution. He won't be able to. And how do we know that? We know that by looking at number two. How likely is a person able to try to change the constitution? You can't. The constitution in America, I think it's fixed, right? It's you cannot change it. So we expected Trump to come, make his own laws, just implement his own wrong laws. That's what we expected. We expected Trump to come up with his own laws to rewrite the constitution and everything. And that was wrong. And the reason for that is because Trump is not cannot. Well, he can, but it's a lengthy process. It's like someone trying to change the constitution in South Africa. It's a lengthy process, and it is a 99.9% chances of failing. You cannot just challenge the constitution and get away with it. Even Trump cannot get away with it. So my point is everything that Trump is doing is legal and is following the law. But how is he doing all this? Because the Constitution of America is so straightforward, it's so simple, and it upholds equality. He's doing that by misinterpreting the Bible. And it all boils down to how you read your Bible, how you read the Constitution, and how you interpret it. Everything boils down to that. And how Trump and his people interpret the Constitution and the law that we have in the Constitution, that is what matters. That is what is there. So in the way that they are interpreting the Constitution, they can come up with not they can overthrow laws. We can see that we can use number two with Roe v. Wade, right? Roe v. Wade has always been there. It's been a legislation, it's been a law. They overthrew that law. They didn't change it, they overthrew it. They told the law that that law is not in the constitution. They use their own way of interpreting scripture. Yeah, they use their own way of interpreting scripture. And that is what I think we should continuously see. Them overthrowing overthrowing a legislation that is important, them taking away they were trying to take out gay rights. They were arguing that I don't know when was it, but I think it was this year. They were arguing that gays shouldn't have that right because it's not in the constitution, blah blah blah. They got into that process, but they were not successful. Why? Because I mean they were not able to interpret the law the way they wanted to. They failed. But how they are going to, I'll say change, but you cannot use the word change because they're not changing. They're misinterpreting what the law says and making legislations that agree with their misinterpretations. Hope that's clear. Anyway, I got sidetracked. I was just giving you a brief summary of what we're dealing with last week because um, a lot of people who are in this meeting right now were not there um, earlier on. Yeah, so we also saw that number two and number three should be close to each other. And there's an illustration there. Okay, so today, as I said, we'll be looking at Revelation 13 and Revelation 17 by looking at through the lens of Isaiah 46. And the aim it is to learn how to interpret prophetic patterns, past, present, and future. Okay, before I continue, are we still together? Am I still audible? One, and are we together?
Yes, you are
Don't
audible.
okay, so I
Mhm.
don't sound muffled. I'm wearing my headset. That's why I continue to ask. Like I keep asking if I'm audible. It doesn't sound muffled, right? I hope so. Anyway, so we're going to continue with lesson 3. Um, so the second thing that was talked about in this lesson is the structure of Revelation 13 and Revelation 17. So both chapters share the same three-part structure: the beginning, the middle, and the end, which is the past, the present, and the future, right? These are called three-way marks or 3 points. And we are positioned in the middle, the present. Not at the beginning or the end. We're positioned in the middle. But this is a hypothetical or not real positioning, because if we look at where we are today, like today, the 23rd of December, we are at number 3, right? The Sunday law. But when we look at this study, we're looking at it in the lens of us being on number 2, the present. Yeah. So, so we are positioned in the middle, which is the present, not the beginning or the end. Ne? And then the third thing that was talked about was Isaiah 46 as a model, right? Isaiah 46, God declares the end from the beginning. And the traditional Protestant view has been beginning equals to prediction, and then end equals to fulfillment. And that is what we've been um, saying all along. Also believe that we're like God declares the end from the beginning, the end equals to the beginning. And we really didn't think about how to get to the end. We just thought that, oh, the beginning is like this, the end must be like this. But we didn't factor in the present, which is, I think, what is this presentation you're teaching is about. And then we have the movement view, right? The beginning equals to the end. They are equal or mirrored, right? Example, Eden to Eden, the restoration model. Another example would be Babylon to Babylon. The second Babylon is from Revelation 17, verse 5. Another example, so Revelation, sorry, yeah. So we just used to have this simple mindset of beginning equals to the end. But Ella Pamanda and the presentation that he's been doing shows that it's not that straightforward, it's not that simple. We cannot just say 1, 2, 3 without looking at number 2, because number 2 tells us the characteristics of number 3. Without number 2, number 3 is pointless, or we won't even see number 3. Okay. The fourth thing that I was talked about is really we were advised to avoid bias, right? To just avoid biases when we do presentation. So we shouldn't use random examples or media articles to prove a thesis. So you might have your own thesis, and because you do not have you cannot find you have an idea, right? Because you cannot find what you're looking for in the Bible, um, you go and um look for a random um not even related thing from Ellen White, and you just try to fit it in because you want to make the story that you want to look at, but you see that it's not fitting, but you just want to do it. And sometimes it might even look like it's fitting, but it's not. So we just advise to not, you know, should avoid our own biases because we all have them, you know. Yeah. And other advice that we told also is that we should use scripture first, right? The secondary sources can only be used as supporting witnesses. So let's say, for example, we're looking at Revelation 13, and I want to understand Revelation 13. I cannot go to Ellen White and want Ellen White to tell me what's happening in Revelation 17 before I myself understand what Revelation 17 is, you know? Yeah. So there was just warnings or advices, whatever you want to call them. So number two and number three should be close to each other. If number one and number three are too far apart, the model breaks. The model doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit. Point two, which is the present, must be close to number three, which is the future, to reveal its dynamics. Without number two, number three itself, we won't even see it. The fifth thing that was talked about here was Daniel 3 as an example, right? It was just an example. So we can say that Daniel 3 is the beginning point, right? Which is Isaiah's Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And then we can connect it to Revelation 13, which is the image of the beast. And the theme there is the power struggle. So the theme, right? The power struggle is God and Nebuchadnezzar, which is divine versus humanity, authority, human authority, and between Nebuchadnezzar and God's citizens, which is human versus human. Again, we go to Daniel 2 versus Daniel 3. Daniel 2 versus Daniel 3, you have Daniel 2 says Babylon will end, right? God says Babylon will end in Daniel 2. Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar dreams, and he's like, nope, God, you're wrong. Nebuchadnezzar will continue forever. And then Revelation 13, which is very ironic. Revelation 17, I mean. Revelation 17, which is very ironic, comes and says, oh, actually, Babylon is gonna continue forever, but not the way you've been thinking, Nebuchadnezzar. It's gonna continue symbolically. Symbolically. Yeah. The sixth thing is identifying the themes. The themes, which is the lines, equals to the story, equals to the histories, equals to the themes. So the theme of this line that we've been looking at is power struggle. And the power struggle must be available and must be seen and visible through all the points. It should be seen in number one, it should be seen in number two, it should be seen in number three. And at point two, which is the present, the dynamic of the power struggle must match the point three. So point two and point three must be not identical, but similar. It should have similar characteristics. Point two equals to the present, which is our time. Like if we're gonna use an example, we'll just say number two is depending on the story you wanna tell. In this story, number two was 2021. And so that number two, it must reflect the same power struggle dynamic as point three. So what the power struggle dynamic we see in point two, we must see in point three. Examples of issues at number two, right? So we're looking at we want to make this a practical example. We're making this a practical example, right? Remember that we said point one, we're looking at an outfit, right? We're seeing a power struggle. Point two, we should also see a power struggle, right? And now we're just pointing out examples that we're seeing in number two. We're at number two, we're in 2021, and you're seeing all the things that happen in the world. We should be able to identify the power struggle. And there were examples that were given. The first example was elections. Does election involve power struggle? Yes, it does. So it's correct. But the second one, immigration, does it? Yes, but secondary. It's not. It's yeah. It's correct, but not at the same time. Does climate change, um, pandemic, war, do they fall under number two? They cannot fall under number two. What is the reason? The reason is the power struggle we're seeing in number three, and the power struggle we're seeing now. Climate change is not a power struggle, because power struggle in Daniel 3 between God and Nebuchadnezzar, between Nebuchadnezzar and citizens. We should be seeing that same thing. And we didn't see that. We don't see that in climate change or war that is happening. We don't really see that. Yeah. Um, well, you can argue that we see that in war, but it should be, we see that in Nebuchadnezzar, we see all that happening in Babylon. It's not Babylon versus some country. No, it's not Babylon versus some other nation. It's Babylon versus Babylon, right? That is the theme we're seeing in number one. Babylon versus Babylon. What we should be seeing number two is the same thing. We should be seeing Babylon versus Babylon, the power struggle there. Nebuchadnezzar versus God, you know, Nebuchadnezzar versus Nebuchadnezzar's people. Yeah, so that is what we should be seeing, identifying. And the pandemic, war, and climate change does not fall under there. And immigration, the reason I said it is a factor, but it does not fall under the power struggle because it does not have to do with America versus America, um, Babylon versus Babylon. The correct focus is between two kingdoms who are in conflict, right? It's God versus Satan within the United States. It should be inside the United States. All this, the power struggle we're identifying should be happening in the United States. As I said, it's Babylon versus Babylon, Babylon versus Babylon, everywhere, everywhere you look. Um, Legal dynamic, right? It's repeating what I said at the beginning of the presentation. I said in Daniel 3, dream, Nebuchadnezzar's decree was legal. What Nebuchadnezzar decreed was legal. It followed the law they had there in Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar did not go beyond the law. Nebuchadnezzar did not try to break the law. Nebuchadnezzar did not try to indulge his own law. I don't think did he? But he was law. So anyway, whatever he was doing was legal, was according to the law. And followed, everyone followed the law. And even if it was under duress, even if you were forced to, but you had to follow the law, right? And therefore, the power struggle at point three, which is the son-in-law, will also be legal in nature. Again, repeating the point that I've been saying, right? Everything will be happening legally, won't be illegally, won't be with some random thing that goes completely against the constitution. Well, depending on how you interpret it. Because we have a correct way of interpreting the constitution, Trump might come and say, "Oh, okay, this legislation that is here, it's not really according to the constitution. It's not really, following the constitution. It's against the constitution." And then, because they're using the conservative way of interpreting and a very sexist and patriarchal way of interpreting the constitution, they are going to be like, "Oh, okay, this law does not really fit with what America, the great America, should be and is." Then that's how they'll overthrow the law. We use that with um the what is it called? Roe v. Wade. The overturn of Roe v. Wade. I think it stops versus something. Yeah. So in that case, you see things very clearly. I think it was in 2021. Was it? I think so. So you just see things clearly there. Yeah, it was. It was during um what's the name? Biden's administration. Yeah, it was in 2021. So you can also use number two. What is that? You can also use the overturning of Roe v. Wade as your example. You just look at everything that transpired under Roe v. Wade. They did everything legally, legally to overthrow the Roe v. Wade. Everything they did, they went to court, they argued their cases, they had an incorrect interpretation of the Constitution, but they still had the Constitution to back them up. And with that, we saw the overturning of a law. So we can use that we see there in Roe v. Wade and see, okay, fine. So they overturned Roe v. Wade by misinterpreting the Constitution, and everything they did was legally. It's all happening legally. They didn't just stand up and say wants everybody who has had an abortion, who wants to have an abortion, is not going to be allowed, and that's it. You know, they didn't just stand up and say that, and then they had to follow the rules. They had to follow the law, and everything they did to overturn Roe v. Wade was legal. Yes. So why is point two essential? Point two is essential because point one and point three are too far apart, and they cannot be connected directly. And point two borrows properties from point one and reveals them in the present, right? So point two will say, oh, okay, you see Roe v. Wade? Roe v. Wade is your education. You see what's happening here? You see what um these people with the mega mindset did? Expect the same thing, almost the same thing in number three. You should be able to see it there, you know? Um, yeah, so this allows an accurate prediction at point three, right? So without point two, you wouldn't even know that you wouldn't even know if, for example, the America they wake up one day and say that LGBT being LGBTQ is wrong in America, and you stand there and you're confused. You don't even know how we got there. Number two will tell you how we got there. Looking at, I'm using my own example. It wasn't used in the presentation, but using my own example from what I understand, you'd use Roe v. Wade, right? So without the whole Roe v. Wade thing, you get to number three, you see that gay rights and just LGBTQ people are just told that they're illegal in America and allowed, cannot be gay, cannot get married. Everybody who's married in LGBTQ shouldn't get married. Their marriage license is not valid, and just being LGBTQ is illegal. You get there number three, you're there number three, and you have no idea how you got there. And why? Because you did not look at number two. Number two will tell you they did it with Roe v. Wade. They overturned Roe v. Wade. No one thought it was possible. If you look at, because there was a point where I was actually studying this whole abortion thing, the case of Roe v. Wade, actually put it in from the beginning. Everybody was shocked. Well, the people who didn't really, most people was shocked. Most people were shocked. They didn't see it coming. It was like they were blindsided, and we didn't see it coming too, you know, because we were not prepared for it. Everybody was so blindsided. We didn't see it. No one saw it. And when it happened, we were shocked. We were literally shocked that, oh my word, in America, abortion is illegal. You know what I mean? So to avoid getting in that position, again, which is number three, to understand what happened number two, which is why I believe we were learning about Roe v. Wade. We were learning about Dobbs versus, I think, Johnson. I forgot the full name of the case, but the reason why I believe we learned about that was to say, okay, this is how they did it. They did it like this, like this, like this. So we should expect more the similar things in number three. Again, these are my views, not movement views. Yeah. So where was I? Yeah. So because we did not we're in technically at the time we were in number two, we were so like we were also shocked. I don't think we were supposed to be shocked as a movement, but we were shocked. We didn't see it coming. We were like, what? I can't believe this is happening. And it happened. So because of number two, it prepared us. It prepared us for what's gonna come. Number number three. And how did they get to the overthrowing of Roe v. Wade? Was their misinterpretation of legislation and the Constitution, and which is how I think they will overthrow other laws that protect people. In number three, they will use the law to overturn those things. Everything is done legally and everything is being used following the law. So number two is very essential because number two is giving us an idea of number three. Number two, the execution of the Sunday law is giving us, okay, Sunday law should expect this and this and this. Should not expect some random, shouldn't expect Trump coming in force and, illegally. Just expect everything being done legally. if there's a case now, some case being thrown into court, we should know that everything they did was legally. They say that they overthrew a legislation that says that women should be paid, diversity legislation, for example, the one that says that everybody should be given the same equal treatment at work, and women should be, given the same payment as men. If they are able to argue using the Constitution and they make good arguments according to them, they can overthrow that. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we should, at least that's what, yeah, it's important, I think um Roe v. Wade had a lesson to tell us, it had a reason to tell us. And the fact that it happened during the education of the Sunday law, you can just see that it had a purpose and it wanted to tell us something. And I think we should be in a point to listen, because they did not make a new law. They did not make a new law saying that abortion is right, is illegal. They didn't do that. Instead, they took the existing law and overthrew it. So I think Roe v. Wade was there for a reason and was there to teach us something, and we should learn from that. Just like what happened in the January 6th um thing, 2021, where Trump tried to take the seat of presidency by force. It taught us a lesson. It taught us that he can't do that. He cannot do that. It taught us a lesson. So I think Roe v. Wade itself has its own lesson to teach us. And yeah. So basically, we're looking at summary for this lesson. So Isaiah 46 equals to the beginning equals to the end. And yeah, it's not just as simple and clear cut as people make it to be. And the theme here is power struggle, the thing between two kingdoms, right? I might have inserted my own thing there, which has nothing to do with the power struggle, but I think Roe v. Wade has a lesson to teach us. And so how did we get to what we're doing? So through just looking at the power struggle and everything we did, we start by identifying the theme at point one, observing its properties at point two, and applying them to point three. Um, a very important takeaway for this presentation is that the struggle is legal. It is not random or chaotic. Everything is legal. Everything they're doing is following the law. And where all this is happening is in the United States of America. Remember, it's America versus America, the glorious land of Daniel 11, verse 41. The takeaway, to understand the Sunday law crisis at point three, we must carefully observe present day power struggle at point two in the United States. We must carefully observe what's happening there. What happened in 2021. You know, observe correctly. And then the struggle we see in point two, um, you know, will tell us more about point three. We're looking at, still have more time. So we'll look at lesson 4. Let me see how long it is. Okay, not that long. I'll just do lesson 4 for today. So lesson 4, okay, for lesson 4, the main focus was, again, Revelation 13 and Revelation 17, and exploring the past, present, future structure. Before I continue, do we have comments, questions? If you didn't hear me and want me to repeat what I said,
I have a question. So Previously, when we looked at one, before the midnight cry message, we would look at one and see um, um, the statue of Daniel 3, and we would connect that to the Sunday law at number 3. So, in trying to understand the importance of number 2, I wanted to know, where did we miss it, previously? Because I know previously
We missed
we didn't look at number 2, but how I'm just trying to understand how number 2 helps us.
um I think we're not at number 2 yet. This Yeah, I think we're not at number 2 yet, right? And what we do, Nick, I think, and also the department identified that we have a problem of when we're in a certain place, we don't see that we're in a certain place until time has went by. Look at the Sunday law, for example. We really accepted it fully while time has passed. We didn't fully predict it. So I think we have to pass number 3. We have to be in a position where we're between number 2 and number 3 to fully see everything, right? I think. But number 2 is important because number 2 is telling us more about number 3. And because we do not know, we do not have a clue of what um number 2 entails, because we're not at number 2 yet. We're not able to look at number 3. I don't know if I'm answering you.
Mm.
We're not
We were
there
not
yet.
yet at number 2.
Yes. Remember that number 2 and number 3 should be close together. So we're not at number 2 yet. We
Mm.
were still there. When you look at the when we look at an example of Daniel 3, we're not at number 2 yet. And even when we got to number 2, we were not aware that we're number 2. We got aware that, oh, okay, number 2 is actually an important thing when we actually were in number 3. And we're like, oh, okay, see what's happening here at number 3. The same thing happened in number 2. And that's when we were like, oh, okay. And also, when we're studying the association of the Sunday law, I think it also gave us a clue of saying, oh, okay, this was what happened in number 2. We should expect the same thing in number 3, because yeah, and we didn't really see it, I think, the way we were supposed to.
Hello.
hmm Sorry, before you go, Lucky, T, are you okay?
Yes, yes,
Hello,
yes,
baby.
yes. Thank you. Yes.
Okay.
We were not at 2 yet. That's why we couldn't yeah, you're saying that's why we couldn't really see 3 clearly, because we were not at 2.
Yes, we need to be a true. The import number 2 is very, very important. Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
Just
yeah.
just to add on this, when you say what did we miss before the midnight cry? So you remember before the midnight cry, we had a way of interpreting the scriptures, the prophecies, which was not correct. So we were relying more on reading literally, like we would rely on Ellen White. Ellen White will tell us that the Sunday law, this is how it's going to look like. All right. So we would know what number 3 looked like according to what Ellen White has told us. So we didn't see a need of of trying to understand it ourselves, how those things would look like. We would know that the Pope, the Sunday law, and all of that, according to the spirit of prophecy. So because this is taken from Isaiah 46, so we didn't even worry about Isaiah, where he was standing, and we would just go there and just look at the beginning and the ending, like that alpha and omega, those concepts. So this is what we will look at, because we didn't have this understanding of trying to know exactly how these things are going to look like, because we already know. Ellen White has told us. So, but now, since the midnight cry has come, now we are finding out now that this whole thing is different. It's not the way we thought it was gonna look like. Now we have a need of trying to understand how this thing is gonna look like. And this is what is gonna lead us now even to try to understand where Isaiah is standing, and we're gonna try to connect that with John, and the book of Revelation and all of those issues. I'm just saying it's because we now we know that our concept is wrong. Now we see a need of trying to understand how this number 3 is going to look like, because we thought we knew, but now we are finding out that no, there's a lot to learn. Right. Thank you.
In fact, you're saying methodology is what made us to see number 2. Otherwise,
Yes.
we wouldn't have had a number 2. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, another, I just remembered a point that Aldo reminded me while he was doing a presentation. I think it was after that when I asked him a question. He said it's so wonderful. It's sad actually that we're walking through history, through very important points in prophecy, very important points, and we were not able to identify them. We only saw when it was too late. And we've been doing that for the longest of time. You know, yeah, that's just the point that Elder reminded me that I just remembered. I hope you answered. But another point that I want to make, even I feel like even if we had the methodology in number 2, in before number 2, before 2021, for example, when we look at the Daniel 3 structure, I don't know. I don't think we're going to be able to predict number 2. I think the only reason we understood number 2 is because we were past it, and that's where we're able to draw out lessons from it. I think even if we had correct methodology, you know, prior to 2021, for example, and we're still in the middle of number 1 and number 2, but not in number 2 directly. Before we passed number 2, before we passed 2021, even if we had the correct methodology, I do not think that we're going to identify number 2. I don't think we're going to correctly identify number 2, therefore not correctly identify number 3. I think we needed to pass number 2. We needed to be working in that timeline or history. We needed to pass number 2 for us. Because I think that is why number 2 is important. Number 2 is there as a hook. It's there to just direct us. And number 2 we have to be at the present. We have to be there. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense. Anyway, I'll just continue. We're looking at lesson 4, I think. Is it 4? Yeah, we're looking at lesson 4. We've been focusing on Revelation 17, Revelation 13, and the past, present, and future structure. Right? And those 2 chapters have a common prophetic theme. Right? You look at Revelation 13, Revelation 7, we see the number 1, 2, and 3 model. We see the past, present, and future model. Revelation 3, and we see that from Revelation, we see that idea 1 to 3 from Isaiah 56, showing how prophecy often connects beginning and endings. Yeah, it's linked the end from the beginning. Okay, so the second thing that was talked about in this presentation was the 1 to 3 model. So point 1 and point 3 are too far apart, right? And point 2 and point 3 close, meaning the present and the future events often overlap or mirror each other. So the present, the future, they often have similar characteristics. And widely used widely in Adventist prophetic interpretation, even when not explicitly stated. So the commander suggested that we use the 1 to 3 model. You've used it in the Adventist prophetic interpretation, but we're not aware of it. The third thing that was talked about here was the agitation and the Sunday law. And then I think we're reading a quote from the Great Controversy, 605.3. Heretofore, those who presented the truth of faith that angel's message have often been regarded as mere alarmists. Their predictions that religious intolerance would gain control in the United States, that the church and the state will unite to persecute those who keep the commandments of God, have been pronounced groundless and absurd. It has been confidently declared that this land could never become other than what it has been, what it has been. Yeah, the defender of religious freedom. Yeah, but the question of enforcing the Sunday law observance is widely agitated. The event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third angel's message will produce an effect which could, the effect which it could have not have done before. So the phrase agitation happens when a long prophesied event begins to be discussed in society. And it goes back to my point that we needed to be at number 2. We needed to be in 2021. Even if we had correct methodology before number 2, before 2021, I don't think we're able to predict, for example, the overthrowing of Roe v. Wade. I don't think we're able to. Or that Trump was going to try to take over the Washington, D.C. by force. I think we needed to be there, which is why the education in number 2 is important. Because if you're going to say that even if we had the methodology before number 2, before 2021, then what's the point of number 2? I think that was also the point I was discussing the camp. People asking what's the point of number 2, and number 2 is very important. So we needed to be at number 2 or past number 2. Anyway, so yeah, the excitation is basically a phrase that is used for when a prophecy has been predicted for a long time, and the events of that same prophecy begin to happen in society. People start talking about them. That is the agitation. An example: the Sunday observance debate, looking at Ellen White. When this issue is publicly discussed, the long the event long doubted, which is the Sunday law, appears near. The third angel's message gains new power once this agitation happens. Point 4 is the key prophetic chapters, right? Revelation 13, Revelation 17, Revelation 14. With Revelation 13, it focuses on laws and enforcement. Example, Sunday law. Revelation 17, it focuses on the power struggle. which is the rise and fall of nations. Revelation 14 focuses on the context of the third angel's message. Point 5 is the link between Revelation 17 and Revelation 13. So we're going to be looking at the chapter theme and the description. Let's look at Revelation 13. The chapter theme, or what we're seeing as a theme in Revelation 13, is the law and worship, right? And the description of that is religious coercion. Example, Sunday law. And then for Revelation 17, we're seeing the power struggles. The description of that is the political transitions between, the kingdoms, the fighting between the kingdoms. And both chapters are parallel accounts for the same prophetic history. So Revelation 13, Revelation 17 are basically saying the same thing, but in different perspectives. And the 7 heads represent 7 kingdoms or dispensations. Point 6, the past, present, future in Daniel. So the beginning of the prophetic history, we sing Babylon, right? Which is our number 1. And to understand the end, which is Revelation 17, you should go back to the beginning, which is Daniel 2 to Daniel 3. Okay, this one I'm just gonna try and elaborate it a bit more because it sounds confusing. I don't know if it's confusing to me. So, right, remember we want to understand number 3, right? So we have to look at number 1. And number 1, we are seeing the beginning of the prophetic story. At the beginning of the prophetic story, we're seeing it in Daniel. So Daniel 3, Daniel 3, 2 and 3, which is Babylon. And to understand Daniel 3, to understand the end, which is Revelation 17, should go back to Daniel 2 and 3. Daniel 2, Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a statue symbolizing the world kingdoms. And God shows him that his kingdom, Babylon, will eventually fall. Then in Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar resists God's revelation by building a golden image, which represents a power struggle between God and Nebuchadnezzar. So number 2, God says, Nebuchadnezzar says that, ask himself if his kingdom is going to last forever. And then God replies to his question, saying that no, actually, your kingdom is not going to last forever, and your kingdom will eventually fall, Babylon. Daniel 3, Nebuchadnezzar says, oh no, God, you're wrong. You are so wrong. My kingdom is going to continue forever. And he was kind of right. So this represents a power struggle between God and Nebuchadnezzar. Point 7, we're seeing the rise and fall of nations. Ne? Yeah, we're seeing the key, the rise and fall of nations. So each kingdom falls due to an international corruption, not just an external war. Remember when we looked at Daniel, um, the fall of Babylon with Eldorine, with the foundational process, we saw how Babylon fell, right? Babylon fell inside first. Babylon had, the first fall was inside. It fell inside first because of internal corruption before it fell outside, basically. It was an internal in from Babylon to Medo-Persia, how Medo-Persia came into picture, there was an internal moral decay. They were drunk and they left the gates open. That itself was an internal problem, because if they did not leave the gates open, that king, I forgot his name, was not going to be able to invade. The kingdom was not going to be able to invade Babylon. And then from Media-Persia to Greece, you have the same pattern, right? It fell inside first. Greece to Rome, we see the same thing. We see the same thing when you look at the Diadochus, for example. The minute Alexander the Great dies and his kingdom is divided into 36 generals, that was the beginning of the end for Greece. Because from there, everything just went south, right? And it took years for everything to go south, but it first died internally first. All the generals were fighting, and four were left. And even with that four, they couldn't even have peace. One died, three were left, and you know, another one was introduced, and everything was just, and that's how Rome came into power. Rome came into power by defeating Greece, because Greece died inside first. It had an internal fall first. You go to from you go to Rome, from pagan Rome to papal Rome, right? The fall was inside first. Um, there was a change with the cultural and ideological shift, and not just a change of nations. So they had a fight. There was an internal, I don't want to call it fight, but internal struggle. So with each of those kingdoms, we're identifying internal struggle. So the religion or ideology of Rome changes from paganism to Catholicism. Um, and then number 8, we're talking about the interpreting Daniel 3, the power struggle. We're interpreting that and how it looks, right? So Nebuchadnezzar is both God and king, a symbol of divine and human conflict. So the story also represents the internal Babylonian politics. So it is not Israel versus Babylon. It's Babylon versus itself. The three Hebrew officials, the wise men or governors, represent an internal opposition, um, with different ideologies within one system. And I think in the presentation day, we saw that the people who were once known as the three Hebrew boys, actually, because their names changed, they were now Babylonian citizens. Yeah. So it was just Babylon versus Babylon. And the fire episode is a political conflict within Babylon. It's a clash between competing ideologies, not just religion versus faith. So usually when we look at Daniel 3, we just seeing religion versus faith, you know, not seeing other thing that we should be seeing. And other thing we should be seeing is the power struggle, the conflict between those ideas or ideologies. And um, point 9, we're looking at the woman and the beast, which is in Revelation 17. Um, one beast with 7 heads equals to 7 kingdoms or powers. And a parallel concept, one woman with 7 phases, um, one for each head. So before we'll just see one beast, right? And 7 heads. And yeah, we also only saw one woman. And this presentation, I think, is the presentation where we saw that, no, it was the one that was in Slovakia, where we saw that in every dispensation, every kingdom, there's a woman there riding the beast. But when you come to the sixth kingdom, you see something different, which is you just see the head, and the woman is not riding the head. So each relationship, which is the woman and the head, differs by time, culture, and context. So the woman that was riding the head in Babylon and the woman that was riding the head in Medo-Persia are not the same because they differ by time. They differ. They are separated because of time, culture, and context. The culture that was in Babylon is not the same culture that was in Medo-Persia. Mm. Yeah. Example: marriage, cohabitation, or separation. Right. Symbolic of different kinds of alliances between religious and political powers. The sixth head is unique. The beast is dead, but he is alive. An unprecedented state in prophecy, and it needs further explanations in later lessons. I think we get to a point where we identify, explain number six, you know. And number 10th thing that was talked about was clarifying the woman's symbol. In earlier lessons, um, the woman changes her clothes, right? That's what we said. We said that the woman changes her clothes. And in this one, she changes her character. And why are we saying that um, the woman changes character, even though the Bible says the woman changes its clothes? We're seeing that the clothes represent, it's a symbol of character and ideology. For example, um, a sheep in a wolf's clothing. That does not that 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 a parable represents um represents a character. Doesn't necessarily speak about the clothing. It just represents the character. A person a sheep in a wolf in a sheep's clothing just represents the character of the said the sheep or of the wolf. Yeah. So the Bible shows one woman to emphasize unity of character through all ages, even though her manifestations of phrases changes. Yeah, I don't really understand this one. I want to explain further. So the summary concept, what we looked at in the fourth lesson, we looked at the prophetic structure, the past, the present, the future. We looked at the dual focus was religious law versus political law. Religious law being Revelation 13, and political law being political power, sorry, political power being Revelation 13, 17. Political power being Revelation 17. And historical anchor is the Babylon story, Daniel 2 to Daniel 3. And then the theological idea is the fall of nations due to moral decay, not strength of enemies. So Babylon comes to an end itself first. They get drunk, they leave the gates open. Greece, Greece divides itself, Greece fights within itself, then Rome comes and takes over. We see a an internal breakdown first. We'll look at more about the seventh kingdom on later presentations. And then the symbolic parallel, 7 heads equals to 7 kingdoms, and 1 woman equals to the same system across all places or areas. Think I'm done. I will look at the story of the woman once more, because I don't think I did justice in point 9 and point 10. So I'm going to look at them correctly and to have better information in them. When we come back, we're going to relook at number 8.10, 8.9, point 10, and then dive into lesson 5, which is for page 12. Thank you for joining. I do not know if you have questions, additions, or anything else. And if there's none of those things, we'll just close with a little prayer. Okay, dear God in heaven, thank you for today's day. Thank you for all that you've shown us and the fact that you have shown us where we are, where we have been, and where we're going. Even though it takes us time to see what you want us to see. Thank you I just want to thank you for the patience that you have for us. Please be with each and every person, yeah, and the ones who will be listening afterwards. And be with us and help us to not just preach, but act what we preach. I pray all this in Christ's name. Amen.